Full and uncut versions available on Patreon. Check in the description below.
Greetings once again, Pokemaniacs. Duuz-Diz-Din back again with more Pokemon Adventures the Ruby and Sapphire arc, where previously, in order to stop the rampaging Kyogre and Groudon, Ruby and Sapphire made their way to the depths to the seafloor cavern to stop the leaders of Team Aqua and Team Magma, only to find Archie and Maxie not as in control as things might have seemed. No, it's more as though Kyogre and Groudon, through the red and blue orbs, are taking control of them, and they are simply tools to fuel the ancient battle that has started once again. Archie and Maxie are managed to capture Ruby and Sapphire after a fierce fight and ascend with some form of energy to the surface, apparently heading to none other than Sootopolis, the scene of the previous ancient battle, as far as I can tell. The gym leaders are trying their damnedest in order to stop Kyogre and Groudon, but the admins of both Magma and Aqua have stood in their path, and some have fallen, such as Watson and Roxanne. Meanwhile, Steven has gathered the Elite Four of Hoenn and has mobilized in order to stop the fearsome creature, while at the same time, both Gabby and Ty have teamed up with the Absol that seems to have clued into what's been going on. But to do what? Who knows? Ruby and Sapphire might have a front row seat to the end of Hoenn as we know it. Can they stop what has been set in motion? Or is all doomed? Join me as I find out, won't you? Alright, Pokemon Adventures Ruby and Sapphire Volume 21. And I guess it's a spoiler that I guess Sapphire gets Minun and Ruby gets Plusle. I thought they ended up with one of each. But it's true, okay. I guess that's a bit of a spoiler on my end. Also, Dawn fan on the cover, but I'll count it. The cover doesn't always mean much. And also Lyron seems to evolve in this one. Interesting. Or maybe at the end. Hard to tell sometimes. Alright, let's jump in. Okay, so Juan finally shows up. Yeah, we're headed to Sootopolis, of course he does. How would they get Plusle and Minun, though? Unless Ruby never gets back Ralts or Feebas. And, maybe Sapphire give up Wailord? Because she never uses Wailord, aside for transportation. Unless she gives up Relicanth. Well, let's see. Oh, I see the silhouette of Rayquaza. I don't know how to pronounce it sometimes. Alright, chapter 250. Wow, long way to go. The beginning of the end with Kyogre and Groudon part 12. We pick up with Gabby and Ty riding atop Absol. And barely starting, we're already getting all the good ones. Following behind the lights engulfing Archie and Maxie, who have grabbed Ruby and Sapphire. Gabby says, those two balls of energy are flying in the same direction as Absol. Wait, is Absol flying or running? Ty, looking at his laptop, says, Gabby, I figured it out. Absol is heading for the mystical city where history slumbers. The city in the crater of a volcano. Sootopolis City. Yeah, we see Archie and Maxie just rocketing straight there. Ty says, it's the town right in the spot where the heat wave and tidal wave will collide. Gabby says, then we were right. This is where the two legendary Pokemon are going to duel. The energy ball that captured Ruby and Sapphire headed that way too. They're in danger. Ty, contact Bagoon. Oh god, I still hate that name. Warn the Pokemon Association President and Captain Stern. Aboard Bagoon, Captain Stern hears from Gabby and Ty on his Pokegear. These questions, a duel? Kyogre and Groudon are going to duel? The old protectors, or Tantalizer's grandparents, either way, say, the male says, our greatest fear is about to become a reality. The woman says, the awakening of the ancient Pokemon. The chairman of the Pokemon Association says, I don't understand. Kyogre and Groudon are already awake and on the move. That was only the first awakening. What is about to happen? Oh no, that's the old people. Say, what is about to happen is the second awakening. The chairman questions, second awakening? The couple says, the first at the seafloor cavern was the awakening of the body. The second is the awakening of the mind. The two legendary Pokemon are going to Sootopolis City to awaken their minds at the Cave of Origin. awaken their mind. There is a deep connection between Mount Pyre and the Cave of Origin. The two orbs that we were protecting will be drawn to those two legendaries, and once their body and mind are awakened, there's only one thing they will do. Rumble, face off. Okay, is this an image of what is to come, or are they already there? Because it looks like they arrived into Stutopolis and just started going at it. Just biting and clawing at each other. Javel. The couple says, fight an epic battle of destruction with every iota of their power. They're finally meeting to settle the score once and for all. And we see it all happening in front of a temple bearing their markings. We cut over to Lily Cove City, back at the museum. Okay, so Hariyama hadn't managed to completely defeat the Slugma. I won't make the joke, I'm sorry. I thought about it though. The two Slugma try to recover, but Brawly has Hariyama use knockoff, slamming the two yet again. The two drop 2 pins. Brawly reaches for them, saying, huh? Is the hairpins that Tate and Liza were wearing. Oh. How did they have them? As the two Slugma are slammed into the wall, and Brawly is really in dire straits. He looks over to Blaze, who's also gasping for air, saying, so you're the one who attacked Tate and Liza. Blaze says, that's right. They got in my way when I went to Mount Pyre to steal those orbs. Brawly shouts, tell me, where are they? Blaze says, hold your horses. Don't push yourself too hard. You just used the maximum attack that blasted away all of my fire. You know you're too tired to fight. But that goes for me too. As he slumps against the wall, Blythe tells him, that's fine. We were just trying to free Groudon, and we succeeded. It should have already reached the Cave of Origins at Stutopolis City by now. I take my hat off to your hard and tough fighting style. You're the first one who's managed to overcome my illusions by sheer force. Blythe disappears into the flames, while Brawly tries reaching out, saying, come back! But he passes out in the process. Meanwhile, Courtney, after blowing some bubblegum, waves to Roxanne, who's looking over her nose pass, saying, see ya, as she also disappears into the flames. And though we don't see her face, we can see the tears falling upon her nose pass, and she says, I let Groudon get away. Oh, I feel bad for Roxanne. I thought something was going to come of their disapproval of evolving Sapphire, but they actually tried to put out the hard fight. Feel like I'm forgetting. Tabitha and Winona. What the heck went on with that fight? Well, we cut back to Flannery battling against Shelly as Vulpix is once again hit with Ludicolo's nature power as wooden branches strike out at it. As Vulpix falls, Flannery calls out to it. Shelly steps forward saying, your Vulpix fainted. Looks like this battle is over. I don't need to keep fighting you now that we've helped Kyogre move on. But maybe it's a good idea to finish you off, show you who's boss. Yeah, that's the Shelly I remember from the anime. No, it was Wallace who was fighting Tabitha, Winona's fighting Matt. And speaking of which, as Matt is still fighting Winona, she sees Flannery about to get attacked again. She moves past Matt, saying, move aside, and jumps in front of Flannery. Shelly says, it doesn't matter how many opponents I face. My tactics are flawless. She commands Ludicolo to once again use nature power. But, much to everyone's bewilderment, nothing happens. Shelly shouts, why isn't your move working? Ludicolo! But Flannery says, didn't you notice? My Vulpix howled at the beginning of the battle. That was Grudge. Oh. Grudge. When a Pokemon is defeated, Grudge renders the move that caused the Pokemon to faint useless. Dang, okay, Flannery. She went in just in case she lost. Smart. Flannery says, that's right. Your Ludicolo can't use nature power anymore. My Vulpix sealed that move with its last bit of strength. And so Shelly has her Vibrava pick her up, saying, so what? It's crystal clear that we're the winners. There's no need for me to stay here. Man, Matt keeps getting the raw end of the deal in all of this. As Matt, who's submerged in the water with his knocked out Vibrava, says, Shelly, take me with you. And Shelly just flies over saying, solve your own problems, Matt. Dang. Cold-blooded. It's very much shown that Aqua has no loyalty amongst their ranks. Magma seems to care more about each other than anything, or at least for the most part. They don't betray each other or leave each other behind. But what I saw in some of the Pokemon animations, it was either generation or evolution. Yeah, that's just the case. Aqua cares very little about each other and their members, and Magma actually seems to give a damn. Flannery tries to pursue, saying, "Come back here, you coward!" But Winona grabs her by the wrist, saying, "Hold it, Flannery. We let Kyogre get away, and we've lost Watson as well. I don't want any more lives lost." Flannery comes to that realization, calming down, saying, "You're right, Watson." But something bubbles up from under the sea and bursts out, breaching the water, much to Winona and Flannery's shock. And we see that it's Watson and Manectric. Flannery is overjoyed, saying, "That's a Pokemon move, Water Spout." Winona looks back down at the water, saying, "Does that mean, was it Wailord?" Yep, it was Wailord. So it was still hanging around. Good Wailord. Man, Wailord is the unsung MVP of this series. Just coming in clutch whenever you don't think about it. Flannery races on, saying, "Is that Sapphire's Wailord?" As Flannery races towards Watson, Winona cuddles Wailord, saying, "You follow me here after Sapphire used Dive to swim to the bottom of the sea. Thank you." That makes sense. Wailord was just left behind, not really with anything to do. That is actually kind of cool. As Flannery tends to Watson, she says, "Hang in there, Watson." But Winona looks around, saying, "By the way, where'd that guy who defeated Watson go?" Yeah, where did Amber go? Huh. Watson says, "Let me spout my thanks for a well-timed water spout." Just kidding. But suddenly something falls before Winona. Some kind of device? Winona looks around, saying, "What? Where did this come from?" Flannery comes behind her, asking, "What is it, Winona?" Winona says it's broken, but it's a device that records the navigation routes of ship. The data is still intact. Departure from Lily Cove City. Dive to the seafloor cavern and rise back up to Route 134. This is the navigation data of Submarine Explorer 1. What? Oh, did Amber leave it? Maybe he kind of finally realized that Archie really did betray him, because he would have been the only one to have that. Flannery says, "Wait, Winona, did you say the submarine departed from off the coast of Lily Cove City? But that means the blue uniform, Team Aqua." Winona says, "Right, Team Aqua's hideout is probably located there." Flannery says, "Let's go, Winona. Maybe that's where they've imprisoned Professor Cosmo, too." As we see Amber hiding in the brush nearby, a sorrowful look on his face. But Winona, Flannery, and Watson take off aboard Wailord, I guess to Lily Cove City. Meanwhile, at Lily Cove department store, we see Wishcast utterly dominating Tabitha's Torkoal, or something. Wallace says, "Isn't it about time you gave up? Your Torkoal can hardly fight thanks to my Wishcast Stackle, and Water Sport from my Love Disc has halved the power of any fire-type move in the immediate vicinity." Man, Wallace really knows how to just line up a defeat. "You cannot defeat me." But Tabitha has this weird look in his eyes, almost like he's possessed in the same way that Maxie and Archie are. Oh, and then Tabitha lunges at Wallace? Yeah, like he's trying to ram into him. But Wallace manages to dodge out of the way. Tabitha hits the wall behind, but he just shakes it off, turning to Wallace. Wallace says something's wrong with him as he jumps up on the nearby balcony. But in one leap, Tabitha manages to bound up towards him, grabs Wallace by the scruff of the neck, and throws him into a vending machine. Wallace tries to recover, saying, "What's wrong with him?" But a voice calls out, "He must have touched the orb at the seafloor cavern. Even touching it for a moment enables it to control you." As we see what seems to be a Metagross descending from up above. As Tabitha gets ready to attack, Wallace looks up to the figure up above, saying, "You're..." But as Tabitha closes in on Wallace, Metagross rushes in, with the figure saying, "Metagross, meteor crash," either slamming into Tabitha or knocking him back, or a little bit of both maybe. What the heck? Steven, are you wearing Wallace's cape? Steven, the cape looks silly on Steven, if I'm being honest. That just does not look like his thing. But Wallace looks up saying, "What took you so long, Steven?" Steven in what should be Wallace's cape says, "I'm sorry. First of all, Wallace, I have a favor to ask you." "Well, it's about time you showed up. It's been a weirdly long amount of time since we last saw him. Alright, chapter 251. The beginning of the end with Kyogre and Groudon, part 13. A lot of parts. Over in Slateport City, the swimmer Jack is with the young blind boy on top of his Gyarados. Where Jack says, the young boy says, "Do you know about Evergrande City?" Jack says, "Of course. It's a dream destination of every Pokemon trainer. The city on the edge of Hoenn where the Pokemon League is held." The blind boy says, "Yes. When the league was established, all the participants took part in a tournament to determine who was the best, but an even tougher rule was created for the tournament itself. The rule that one must first challenge the champion and the Elite Four." So like the Champions Tournament. Wow, but to make that an addition to be like the champion, you have to go through the brackets, then defeat the Elite Four, and then the previous champion. Dang. The voice says the Elite Four are selected from the top ranking trainers from the past tournament. They fight the trainer who wins the Pokemon League. Only after defeating the Elite Four and the current champion you had the right to call yourself the best trainer and enter the Hall of Fame. The guy who told you that was, it was the current champion of the Pokemon League who taught me how to read the bumps on this stone plate. The young boy says, Jack says, "The rain's coming down harder and the Pokemon Association shit didn't notice us. Just flew right by. I managed to find you, but now we can't leave." The young boy says, "I made a promise to Steven Stone, the champion." Jack says, "What?" The young boy says, "The champion told me that this was a very important stone plate and that he needs me to hold on to it until he comes back for it one day. That's what he said. That's okay. I have to stay here anyway, no matter what." Which, I don't know why you didn't trust that to a young boy, but whatever. And we see a plethora. The Elite Four and their Pokemon. Phoebe and her, wait for it, Dusclops, I'm already filled up, dang, all riding aboard Matang, Sydney and his Zigzagoon, or no, I always say that, Zangoose, Glacia and her Glalie, and Drake and his Shelligon, all approaching Wallace. Steven introduces Phoebe, Sydney, Glacia, and Drake. Oh no, it's Wallace who calls out to them, like he already knows them. Wallace says, "Great, all 5 of you here are here. I haven't seen you all together like this in ages." Phoebe raises a leg saying, Phoebe lifts one leg in the air saying, "We can go wherever we like when the Pokemon League isn't in session." Sydney says, "That's right. So why don't you call us all in? Why did you call us all in, Steven?" Steven says, "I had to travel to all those other regions in search of you. It wasn't easy, you know. But when I asked myself which friends I could depend on to help me, I couldn't imagine a better team than this." Glacia says, "How could we not answer your call when the survival of the Hoenn regions is at stake, Steven?" Drake says, "Exactly. It's the same for you too, right, Wallace?" Steven says, "Now then, I've explained the plan. Now I need all of you to take your places. I'm counting on you." Phoebe gives a wink, Sydney strums his guitar, Gracia gives a curtsy, and Drake simply lifts his hand? Pokeball in the air, and they all fly off on Matang. Wallace watches, questioning, take our places? What are you up to?" Steven says, "Here's your answer." Takes off his cloak, handing it over to Wallace, saying, "I'm entrusting you with this. Now that we're fighting together, you know what that means, right?" Wallace says, "The champion cake." "Oh, really?" Steven says, "Correct, but there's nothing special about me giving you this. I'm only giving it back to its rightful owner. You won the Pokemon League and entered the Hall of Fame once. This cape belongs to you." Oh, and we see Wallace using is that a clam pearl? Taking out a Meditite in the president's office. It's a flashback. He says, "You are hereby inducted into the Hall of Fame. Congratulations. We have a new champion, Wallace. I'd like you to take on the duties of the champion from this day forth. The ranks have shifted now that we have a new champion. That means the Elite Four will be the 4 top-ranked trainers, starting from Steven at the top and moving down to..." But Wallace pauses and says, "Excuse me. Actually, I was thinking of turning your kind offer down." The chairman asks, "What? Why?" Wallace says, "My master, Gym Leader Juan. I've always dreamed of following in his footsteps and becoming the gym leader of Sootopolis City. And one cannot be a gym leader and the champion at the same time." Oh, so there's a rule behind that. That's what you said. Oh, Steven says that in present day. That's what you said before resigning from your position as champion. And I was given the cape because I was the next highest ranking trainer. Oh. See, in the games, as far as I know, it's a situation where Steven had left and Wallace took over, because I guess either he took on the challenge and became the next highest rank or something along those lines. But the idea that Wallace should have been at the top and Steven was the kind of the runner-up, that's wild. Shoot, I guess Wallace should have competed against Ash instead of Steven. I will say, it's one of those few situations where I feel like Wallace should have been in that tournament. Though we had to get in, the one dude with the Charizard that was really cool. Steven says, Wallace says, we're equals. I've never been better than you. Steven says, it's so lucky to say that. But I know another reason why you turned down the position. Of course, you were telling the truth when you said you wanted to take Juan's place. But the more important reason was that Winona became the gym leader of Fortree City around the same time. You wanted to become a gym leader so you could stay near her. Isn't that right? Wallace puts up his hand saying, you knew, huh? At any rate, Steven, I have no doubt that you were a better choice for champion. As proof, you fulfilled your duties to perfection. You stood at the top of the league and defeated all challengers. So I have to ask, why are you returning the cape now after all this time? Steven says but suddenly they're interrupted by Tabitha convulsing and rising up, summoning his Torkoal to his side. Steven calls for his Metagross to go into action, striking against the Torkoal. Or defending against it? I can't really even tell. And they whirl around as Steven keeps Wallace away from the enraged Tabitha. Steven says he's still under the influence of the orb, but he only touched it for a moment. I mean, how do you know that? So what's happened to the people who were trying to control the legendary Pokemon down in the sea floor? Wallace says the only way to find out is to go after Groudon. As they look out, he says it's gone. How? Roxanne stopped it with Block. Steven says the trainer who used Block has been defeated. Groudon has reached Fruitopolis City. Its mind has now been fully awakened, and as proof of that, check the time. Wallace says, the time? Steven shows his wrists, and Wallace is aghast. Steven says, you probably hadn't noticed because you're so busy fighting, but it's the middle of the night. The sun has already set. What? Yeah, and Wallace says, impossible. Why is it so bright here then? Steven says, it's from the light and the heat emanating from Groudon's body now that it's fully awake. Jeez. I have to hurry and put my father's plan into action. Steven says as he grabs Wallace and dives out of the way of Metagross being tossed to the side into the gate of the roof that they're on. Wallace says, your father? You mean President Stone of the Devon Corporation? Well, Steven says, right. We noticed the presence of these two evil organizations some time ago. We also discovered that the enemy had infiltrated the Devon Corporation. That's why we had to do everything in secrecy. Wallace questions, in secrecy? Oh yeah, they never got that letter too. Steven, did they? Shoot, I completely forgot about the letter. Steven says, we're up against two ancient legendary Pokemon. Our aim is to prevent them from waging an all-out battle with each other. We need the strength to face them. You see Sydney, Glacia, and Drake all at different temple locations. Sydney strums his guitar again with his Zangoose saying, I'm here, Steven. Glacia Henner Laylee says, me too. Drake in his Shalagon says, I'm ready too, Steven. As Steven's Metagross continues to clash with Torkoal, he says, roger that. He then thinks, Wallace, I'm handing the champion cape to you, because there's a possibility that I won't survive this struggle. Oh, as we see the shadows of Regirock, Regice, and Registeel ready to be awakened. Okay, and it looks like both Ruby and Sapphire are almost at Fruitopolis City. Oh man, and a lot's happening right now, jeez. But it's not a bad plan. I completely forgot about the Reggies. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. If there's any way of stopping these Pokemon, it probably would be the Reggies. Alright, chapter 252. The beginning of the end with Kyogre and Groudon. Part 14. I have to remember what Roman numerals stand for. We see over with swimmer Jack and the young blind boy with the tablet. There's a rumbling, and the boy almost falls into the water. Jack grabs and says, whoa, hold on tight. The boy says, I will, with Jack saying, you know, with the weather like it is, and they see the crumbling buildings all around them, man, it is so apocalyptic here. I know they rebuild pretty fast in the Pokemon universe, but this is gonna take some doing. Jack says, these buildings are starting to collapse from all the rain. You can't stay here any longer. The young boy says, but I promise. Jack says, you won't be able to keep that promise if a building falls on you. But suddenly, the building that they're near collapses almost right on top of them. Jack cries out, oh, the building is collapsing! But suddenly a voice calls out, Shadow Punch! And the building is destroyed before it can impact them. Jack is shocked, saying, huh? But a voice calls out, you okay? As we see Phoebe on top of on Steven's Metang with her Dusclops, saying, I'm here to help. You're the boy, right? The one Steven left the stone plate with? Oh, she's so funky. The boy says, who are you? She says, Phoebe, one of the Elite Four. Come up here. She gets on her Pokegear saying, Steven, I found him. Steven says, great, thanks a lot. Much to the boy's shock. The boy says, is that Steven on the phone? Phoebe gives a wink saying, that's right. Steven says, Phoebe, ask him to read what it says on the stone plate. Oh, Steven's Metang is Metagross is still battling Torkoal. Wallace asks, what's going on, Steven? Steven says, hello, Wallace. The two legendary Pokemon have already begun to fight. I need you to head down to Sootopolis City right away. I'll catch up with you. Trust me. Go. But he has this look like, yeah, no. We know from his thought at the end of last chapter, but that look in his eyes says, yeah, no, I don't think I'm making it out of this. And it's obvious Wallace is just like, you don't think you're going to live, do you? So Wallace takes the cloak. Finally, his grip is complete, saying, if you say so, and he takes off. Wallace gets back on his wrist communicator saying, long time no speak. Do you have the stone plate with you? Boy says, yes. I love the way Jack has his star keeping Phoebe and the boy out of the rain. Steven says, good. Thank you for keeping it safe. Have you been able to decipher it yet? The boy says, yes. I had all the confidence in the world. Oh, Steven says, I had all the confidence in the world that you would. Once I taught you how to read it with your finger. And I think the boy says, now we can finally awaken the 3 Pokemon capable of stopping those 2 Pokemon from fighting. Oh no, it's Steven saying that. Regirock, Registeel, and Regice. Can you read it for me? The voice says, okay. He then reads the words saying, in this cave we have lived. We owe it all to these Pokemon. But we sealed them. We feared them. Those with courage, those with hope. Open a door. The eternal Pokemon await. First, Steven questions, what's wrong? And the boy shakes his head saying, I can't read it. First comes what? Last comes I'm sorry, there's a section missing from the stone plate. That's all I can make out. Much to Steven's shock, which, I feel like he should have known that, considering he gave him the tablet unless it wasn't missing before the boy was rescued. Steven's hand falls as he thinks, I was hoping he'd be able to figure out the missing words. But now. Okay, so he knew. Really? Dang. Why did you think the kid would figure it out, though? Winona and Flannery arrive at, I guess, Team Aqua's secret base. As Flannery says, Winona, we were right. This is Team Aqua's hideout. Winona looks around saying, but it's completely deserted. Flannery says, you're right. Maybe they abandoned it after Kyogre was awakened. But as she opens the door, they find Professor Cosmo tied up and gagged. As they get the duct tape off his mouth, Professor Cosmo says, you're the one from Mount Chimney. Flannery says, yes, I'm so glad you're all right. But as Cosmo is unbound, he wells up with tears, shaking, saying, I'm so sorry. They tricked me. I can't believe what I've done. But they tell him, Professor Cosmo, you have to get out of here. We'll take you to the Pokemon Association's flying headquarters. And as they take him aboard, we see Professor Cosmo's assistants along with Wallace's cheerleaders. I actually forgot about them. The assistants say, we're so glad you're all right. While Winona says, join Watson and Flannery and get treated for your injuries inside Bagoon. But Flannery asks, what about you, Winona? Winona looks to the sky saying, I'm headed down to Sootopolis City, where Kyogre and Groudon are battling. Flannery says, then I'll go too. Winona tells her no. Rest and recovery is important during a battle. That's an order from me, the leader of the gym leaders. So she takes off on her Altaria, with we see Wailord still following, as Watson tries to comfort Flannery with a hand on her shoulder. She then contacts the Pokemon Association chairman, with Captain Stern listening in. She says, it's me, Winona. I'll head down to Sootopolis City and as instructed. but Flannery and Watson got hurt, so I've told them to withdraw from the battle. The chairman says, what? I received a report from Wallace that Roxanne and Brawley have been taken out as well. That means only Winona and Wallace are capable of fighting at the moment, but we're at the highest emergency level. Anybody will do. We need to get all the help we can get. As Wallace is on his flying car, he says, anybody, huh? The chairman says, I repeat, we need every able-bodied person to head down to... But Winona says, I don't know how many people will be able to get to Sutopolis City, but even if I'm the last person standing, I'll go. And she flies down on her Altaria, as we see that Archie and Maxie and their weird floating orbs have arrived above the scene of the clash between Kyogre and Groudon. Archie and his group land atop Kyogre, while Maxie and his group land atop Groudon, as they send everybody else on, the buildings that are in the surrounding area, alongside Ruby and Sapphire. Kyogre, speaking through Archie, says, ha 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 ha, so much chaos all over Hoenn, and finally, we've returned to Sutopolis City, while Groudon, speaking through Maxie, says, the only thing left now is to get rid of you. Sapphire looks on, saying, the battle against Kyogre and Groudon, while Ruby says, we have to put a stop to it. Sapphire sends out Blaziken, while Ruby sends out Marshtomp, and bada bing, Marshtomp. That's how you can tell we're getting towards the end, because I am getting crowded out by these Pokemon. But both Maxie and Archie, or I guess Kyogre and Groudon, shout, get out of our way! And they blast back both of the Pokemon. They say, just stay there and watch. Well, Kyogre says, just stay there and watch. Groudon saying, you ought to feel honored to have the privilege of witnessing this historic event. Oh, but Gabby and Ty arrive with Absol, just as Kyogre and Groudon, with Archie and Maxie atop of them, clash. Gabby says, so this is the legendary battle. It's devastating. The force of these two Pokemon struggle against each other is tearing the world apart. Where are Ruby and Sapphire? Ty calls out, I found them. There's Ruby. Gabby asks, what about Sapphire? Ty says, they're on opposite sides of the battleground. Gabby calls out, hey Ty, isn't there anything we can do to help? She goes up to Absol saying, please Absol, do something. Oh, and Absol does something and sends up some kind of force field around Ruby and Sapphire. Gabby says, magic coat. Thank you, Absol. You're on our side after all. Attack them. Use one of your powerful attacks to put a stop to this. But Absol doesn't respond. Gabby calls out to Absol. And Ty says, I think you're barking up the wrong tree, Gabby. Absol helped us, but it's not on anyone's side. If what you figured about Absol is correct, then it only warns people about impending disaster. It's a Pokemon, a part of the natural world. All it can do is observe what takes place. And then Wallace arrives in his flying car. I'm sorry, I can't get over the flying car. And the love disc in the passenger seat. Wallace says, I think you're right. Gabby calls out to Wallace. As Wallace says, this disaster was caused by people. We can't ask Pokemon to solve it for us. Ruby and I will stop this battle ourselves. And a voice calls out, that's right. As Winona arrives on the scene saying, we gym leaders will fix this ourselves. So Gabby shouts to Winona. Winona arrives by Sapphire, who's been injured. As Winona picks up Sapphire, something falls out of her fanny pack. As Wallace goes to Ruby, Ruby says, oh, Master, you've come. Sapphire calls out to Winona, but Ruby says, I'm sorry, we failed. We didn't get the orbs back. They've merged with the ancient Pokemon. We can't fight them. They're too powerful now. But Wallace says, don't give up. There must be a way. Meanwhile, Sapphire says, I'm real sorry. We weren't strong enough. There ain't nothing we can do to fight them now. Go ahead and escape without us, Master. But Winona says, don't give up. Do you really want to fall here? And both Wallace and Winona tell them, you're a trainer with a great future ahead of you. What about your Pokemon? You want to lose them? You can't give up on everyone you care about. Something clicks in both the minds of Ruby and Sapphire. Ruby says, actually, there is one person. Sapphire says, no, I can't. I gotta see him one more time again. Ruby says, I have to see her one more time again because there's something I have to tell her. Someone I remember. from long ago. I don't remember her name or what she looks like. She was the daughter of a friend of my father. I tagged along to cheer on my dad. He was trying out to be a gym leader. We were only together for a couple of days, but those were the best days of my life. Sapphire says, I have to see him because I got something to tell him. There's this guy I remember from when I was a kid. Can't picture his face. I don't remember his name, but he was the son of my dad's friend. And I visited them with my dad. We were only together for a couple of days, but those were the best days of my life. Ruby says, you probably won't believe me, Master, but back then I was a wild kid who loved Pokemon battles and got dirty all the time. While Sapphire says, I bet you won't believe me, Master, but back then I was a timid kid who never fought Pokemon battles or climbed trees. Ah, so they were originally on track to be how they are in most other media. Ruby being, the battler, while Sapphire / May becomes the coordinator. And geez, Norman looks more like the Norman I know from the anime. We cut over to the Johto region 5 years ago as Sweet Caroline. There it is. I had to remember what I call her. Caroline says, today's the day you'll become a gym leader. Your dream will finally come true. While Birch says, you don't know it, but the tryout hasn't even started yet. Just kidding. How could Norman fail this test? I bet you're more worried about which gym he'll be assigned to once he passes his tryout. While Caroline says, oh no, I'd go anywhere with him. Birch jabs at Norman saying, oh, you're all smiles, Norman. Hey, you should come over to the Hoenn region. But Norman just chuckles it off. He then asks, where's Ruby? Caroline says, playing over there. He really enjoys the great outdoors. Birch asks, is my daughter with him? Caroline says, of course, they get along like peanut butter and jelly. They've only just met, but they're already the best of friends. Ruby says she was very polite and ladylike, and also super cute. While Sapphire says he was very athletic and gentlemanly and super cool. As we see them playing with each other, including a skitty. I had never had so much fun in my life. But then something happened. We see the young Ruby and Sapphire playing, and that is until a wild Salamence appears. Yep, another one of my favorite. I just think it's neat. The young Ruby calls out, a wild Salamence, and the Salamence attacks, trying to bite at Sapphire. Ruby says, look out, and grabs at Sapphire, getting her out of the way. He gets Sapphire to safety, saying, stay here, and he sends out his Poochyena, Skitty, and Ralts, saying, Nana, Kiki, Rara. And they all attack the Salamence, as Ruby has this intense look in his eyes saying, I have to protect her. I'll defeat you, Salamence. But the Salamence whips out at Ruby, knocking him down. Sapphire screams as Ruby says, Dragon Claw, huh? Is that all you got? Well, show me. Well, let me show you what I learned from my father. And Skitty goes in. I don't even know what it's really doing. But the Salamence is hurt and goes running away. Ruby says, I won. Don't worry, you're safe now. Ooh, but he's bleeding from a gash on his forehead. But it's probably that one gash that bleeds a lot. If you get cut there, like it gushes blood, but it's not as bad as it looked. Ruby says, I got rid of the Salamence for you. But Sapphire wells up with tears, crying, you're scary. Oh, scary. Ruby says she wasn't scared of the Salamence. She was scared of me. Or that my father wasn't home much. He failed his tryout, so after that, he spent all his time training. I lost a friend because of that Pokemon battle. While Sapphire says, he helped me, but then I hurt his feelings. After that, my father got really busy with his research. I learned a lot about Pokemon by helping him with it. I hurt my friend because I was weak and couldn't protect myself. Ruby says, I frightened my friend. While Sapphire says, I pushed my friend away my friend. And that's when I decided, Ruby says, to pursue beauty instead of power. And never fight in front of anyone again. Now Sapphire says to pursue power instead of beauty, to gain the strength to protect myself and others. They both say, I want to show my friend how much I've changed. But suddenly the ground collapses under them. Wallace says, huh? The ground is breaking apart. Well, Winona says, Sapphire, jump on. And they race to Altaria. Ruby says, I'm sorry, Master. I didn't mean to waste time here now that it's all about to end. Wallace says, the end? Don't be ridiculous. While Sapphire says, I'm sorry, Master. Winona says, pull yourself together. We're going to meet up with Wallace on the other side. Wallace tells Ruby, I'm not letting anything end here. And Winona says, and when we get back, you'll show your friend just how much you've changed. Ruby says, you're right, Master. Sapphire says, you're right, Master. And as they both arrive at the same place, Wallace says, well, now that that's settled, what are you going to do now? Ruby says, Master, there's only one way to stop those two from fighting. You have to cut off the power of the orbs. But the orbs are inside the leaders of Team Magma and Team Aqua now. Wallace says, they're what? So Ruby tells them, so if we can stop those two, we can probably stop the legendary Pokemon as well. Wallace says, I get it, but how in the world are we going to accomplish that? Winona says, we can't just attack those people with Pokemon moves. We could hurt them, which, I mean, yeah, they're good people. They don't think of using Pokemon to harm others. But suddenly something shines in Winona's hand. Wallace says, what's wrong, Winona? Winona opens her hand, saying, the stone that fell out of Sapphire's pouch is heating up. What? It's a piece of that meteorite. Wallace says, Sapphire, where did you get this? Sapphire says, at Mount Chimney. Team Aqua must have dropped it. Wallace says, we might be able to use this somehow to steal the power away. Ruby asks, what do you mean, Master? Wallace explains, according to a friend of mine, the meteor has the power to cancel out any natural power. We know how effective it is, after all. It stopped the volcanic activity of Mount Chimney, so, Sapphire says, if we can somehow aim the power of the meteorite on the orbs inside those people, Ruby says, we might be able to stop them. But Winona turns to them saying, but where do we aim? Right? Ruby explains, weird marks appeared on the backs of their hands when the orbs were absorbed. The marks moved up their arms to their shoulders, and finally to the forehead, and as they moved, it seemed as if their synchronization with the legendary Pokemon increased. If those marks appear because of the power seeping out of the orbs, then the orbs must be inside their heads now, which, explains the control. They're pretty far from us. How about if we focus the power of the meteorite at the same time, and reflect the attacks off Magic Coat? Wallace says, you get the best angle you'll need. To get the best angle you need the help of my air car, and Winona says, and my Altaria. Wallace tells them, we only have a small fragment of the meteorite. You'll only have one chance. We're counting on you. Now I think about it, is Wallace wearing the cape? No, he's not wearing the cape yet. Dang it! Respect the drift, Wallace! Ruby and Sapphire turn to each other. Ruby says, let's do it. This time, Will? Sapphire says, right. We'll stop them together. And the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. So Wallace and his Walrein, or Celio, there we go, had to find the name, position one Magic Coat, while Winona and her Altaria position another, flying it up. Both Blaziken and Swampert charge up as Ruby and Sapphire launch the meteorite into the air. Blaziken and Swampert hit it simultaneously as Ruby and Sapphire shout, go! And in the trickiest trick shot imaginable, it reflects off of the mirror coat, hitting both Archie and Maxie in the head exactly at the same time. The power of the orb dissipates from their heads, and they're sent flying, along with Groudon and Kyogre being sent flying backwards, and the energy from the blast just knocks everybody back, just consumes oh my god, did the city get destroyed? It looks like Pseutopolis got friggin' destroyed. Okay, that probably wasn't supposed to happen. I hope there's nobody in Pseutopolis. Okay then. Alright, now it's chapter 253. A Royal Rumble with Regirock, Regice, and Registeel, Part 1. Oh man, we just keep adding all these Pokemon. As, Pseutopolis looks like it explodes. End of story? Even feels that thing, huh? Massive impact from the direction of Pseutopolis. I felt a huge surge of power just now. And then an explosion. Did Wallace stop them? As we see Metagross holding down Torkoal. He listens and says no, he hasn't. Shockwave is spreading outward. Meanwhile, in New Mauville, you see the little kids saying, is the patient from Rustboro City Hospital? Is that a patient from Rustboro City Hospital? What was this guy's name? Riley says, shh, you can't play here. This man has been in a coma for almost 2 months. Oh no, it's Riley who says shh. And Wanda, who says this patient has been in a coma for almost 2 months. The kids say, oops, thank goodness we were able to bring him here to be cared for, says Wanda. Riley says, right, I'm glad the tunnel construction was finished. The kids say, slowly, slowly, as they wheel in Mr. Stone, who in his coma calls out for Steven. I didn't know he was in a full-on coma. Jeez. Back over in Lily Cove, Steven says, we have to figure this out fast. First comes Wa, last comes Re. You were able to read that far, right? The young blind boy says, yes, but the most important part is broken off and you can't read it. Re and Wa. What could the next words be? Steven says, my father was researching it, but I haven't been able to get in contact with him. He must have failed. Meanwhile, Sydney calls out, well, Steven, we're ready and waiting. We see Drake and his shell gun banging on the door of the temple as he says, tell us something. Glacia, with her Spiel and Snow Runt attacking the door, says, just say the word and somehow we'll summon Regirock, Registeel, and Regice. As we see Sydney and his Zangoose attacking another temple wall. Sydney commands his Zangoose to use Crush Claw. As he strums his guitar, he says, this wall is solid. Guess it's not gonna do any good to attack the wall directly. What's Phoebe doing? Meanwhile, with Phoebe, he puts on some glasses. He says, let's see if I can find something out using this special Devon scope I borrowed from Steven. Devon scope? That's something? Yeah, that is an actual item. To see things unseen. That's cool. She looks at the tablets, saying first infrared light. Since it says first comes and last comes, I think it's meant to indicate an order of some kind, or an array of two or more things. Steven says, oh no, we're out of time. I'm going to change a part of our plan. We'll head down to the final battleground together with Regirock, Registeel, and Regice. We don't have time to figure this out. I'll have to go on alone ahead of you. If I don't stop the waves spreading out from Sootopolis City, the entire Hoenn region will be engulfed. He calls into all of them saying, Drake, Glacia, Sydney, I'd like you to keep up your attack. Phoebe, I want you to meet me with that stone plate. Understood? Phoebe says, got it. But she turns to the nervous child saying, don't worry, we're this close to reading the plate. You've worked so hard to decipher it. Your efforts won't be in vain. And they take off. Steven takes off on his Metagross as Gabby and Ty on Absol try to flee the explosion, while Winona is on her Altaria down with Wallace in his air car, while we see Ruby caught up in the blast. Steven is making his way over and sees the destruction being wrought by the energies clashing. He says, huh? The intensity of this energy is unbelievable, and I'm not even that close to Sootopolis City yet. The damage is spreading. The impact and the heat of the two Pokemon clashing against each other. It's so intense. He tells Metagross, avoid the flying rubble and keep going. Reflect. While Kyogre and Groudon are still trying to get at each other, the energy emanating out. Steven says, He then sees someone saying, oh no, somebody got blown away by the shock. Metagross, we have to help them. And he grabs the hand of the person saying, hang in there. My name is Steven. I'll protect you. And, of course, Sapphire says, what? What did you call yourself? Your name's Steven. Steven says, yes. Sapphire says, I can't believe this. I traveled all over Hoenn, even down to the seafloor cavern, and I finally meet you here. Hi, Steven. The president of the Devon Corporation asked me to deliver this letter to you. Steven says, a letter from my father? And as he grabs the letter, he uses one hand just to rip it open, and he sees it written in Braille. Steven says, a type of Braille, just like the stone plate, in ancient letters which the enemy can't read. And as he reads it, he says, first comes Wailord, last comes Relicanth. He says, this message fills in the missing section on the stone plate. My father did analyze it successfully. I see. This is the order of the Pokemon I need to summon Regirock, Registeel, and Regice. Which, why? Why this? What? A Wailord and a Relicanth, the two Pokemon Sapphire currently has in her possession. It is legend. Okay then. Alright, the last chapter of this video. Chapter 254. A Royal Rumble with Regirock, Regice, and Registeel Part 2. Ooh boy. So that's Braille that's been there. I thought it was, but I wasn't sure. Steven reads the letter saying, Wailord and Relicanth. As Phoebe arrives on Metang, calling out to Steven, Phoebe hands over the tablet saying, here. And as Steven puts the letter in with the missing section of the tablet, he says, this is it. This tells me the alignment of the Pokemon group I need. The Pokemon order required to summon Regirock, Registeel, and Regice. Do you actually need an order to summon these guys? You have to solve some kind of puzzle. Yeah, you just have to solve a puzzle. And that sounds a little bit more right. It's funny too because I remember them all being in the Battle Frontier, being owned by Brandon, and it's just like, bruh, you have all the Reggies? Well, the Reggies introduced up until that point, until you get what are they called? Reggie Lecky and Reggie Drago. And don't get me started on the big guy. Yeah, so, I mean, you had to solve something, so I guess no matter what, that's what you had to do. But Phoebe says, great, but wait, we can only stop the two Pokemon from fighting if we have a Wailord and a Relicanth. Steven turns to her saying, right. And Sapphire says, I can't believe it. Steven, this is the first time I've believed that I have a destiny. And she calls out, Lori, Relly, to both her Wailord and her Relicanth. And just like that, they both rise from the depths of the sea, leaping into the air. And Steven says, a Wailord and a Relicanth? Man, this Wailord is like the most traveled Wailord imaginable. Just always showing up on time. But then again, it probably was following Winona. And Steven says, you mean they're your Pokemon? You delivered the letter to me, and you have the exact two Pokemon we need to do this. You're right. This must be destiny. Deus ex machina. And yeah, it has to be destiny. It's as foretold. He says, okay then. I'll place them in my group in that order. Also, he has to have that in the order of Pokemon. And so he puts his Beldum in between as like in a Pokemon grouping order. And suddenly, the stone that Steven is holding on starts to vibrate. As Phoebe says, Steven, the stone! And the Braille words start to light up. Steven says, those with courage, those with hope. Open the door. The eternal Pokemon await. First comes Wailord, last comes Relicanth. And the door shall open. And a massive beam erupts from where Steven and the others are. And it goes surging off into three different directions. Sydney, Drake, and Glacia all see it surging towards them. They think it's here, as it illuminates the doors that they were trying to open as they dodge out of the way. And the light shines upon the three legendary golems, awakening Regice, Registeel, and Regirock. As Steven looks back towards the tablet, he thinks back to the past, thinking of his father and his father's words. As he said, Steven, listen closely. In order to stop the two evil organizations, the one with the red uniform and the one with the blue uniform, we cannot let them awaken Kyogre and Groudon. Steven says, I see. Mr. Stone says, Mr. Stern is currently building a submarine at Slateport City. You are to gather a team you trust to ride that submarine down to the seafloor cavern and block the entrance. I haven't even told Stern about this part of the plan, but I will when the time comes. I'll stay here to accelerate the development of the core component of the submarine. You'll need to dive that far down. Stern will get in contact with you once the submarine is close to the temple to completion. Steven says, got it. Mr. Stone says, however, the enemy gets ahead of us. In other words, if Kyogre and Groudon are awakened and have already begun to fight. It's funny because by doing this, Mr. Stone helped complete like a prophecy, but I guess it was bound to always happen. Mr. Stone says, you must execute Plan B. For this plan, you'll have to use Regirock, Registeel, and Regice to stop their battle. Steven asks, what did you do? Oh, Mr. Stone says, what did you do with that stone plate? Steven says, I gave it to a boy I met at the hospital. He has a sensitive sense of touch. I taught him how to read the plate. I think he's the one who can best interpret those withered, decaying letters. Mr. Stone says, I see. All right. I'll back you up with more scientific analysis. In addition, I'd like you to research those caves and ruins again. See if there are any more clues there. Steven is taken aback, though, as Mr. Stone says, Steven, you'll need help. You'll have to work as a team. I need you to return peace to Hoenn as the Reggies awaken. Awaken, 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 awaken. But in his hands, the stone tablet shatters in front of Steven. Sapphire calls over to Steven. Steven says, I'm fine. The stone plate broke apart because it fulfilled its job, which means we successfully awakened Regirock, Registeel, and Regice. We did it. Sapphire says, you did? Steven reaches over to Sapphire, who's clinging on to Metagross's arm, saying, thank you. And now, let's go deal with the shockwaves. But the shockwave keeps growing out, and it consumes Sapphire. And she says, that's great. But she loses her grip on Steven's hand and is sent flying. Ruby awakens, questioning, where am I? I went to the seafloor cavern. I fought at Sootopolis City. Oh, that's right. I got caught in the middle of Kyogre and Groudon's fight, and he then notices Sapphire next to him. Weird how that all worked out. He shakes her, saying, Sapphire, hey, wake up. Sapphire says, it's you. Huh? Where's Steven? Where are we? Ruby says, I don't know. It's like this place is totally separated from the battle and the chaos raging in the Hoenn region. It's so quiet and beautiful. A figure approaches saying, "Are you awake?" And "Are you awake? Finally, you two were asleep for the longest time." They turn, seeing none other than Juan, as well as Tate and Liza. Juan says, "Buenos dias. Welcome to your final training place." What? Wait, what? Wait, what? Wait, what? Wait, what? Wait, what do you mean final training place? What the heck is going on? Where did they end up? Huh. Where are they? Mirage Island. I have no idea what that is. I don't know where that is. Okay, that tells me nothing, which is probably for the best, because reaction and all that. Okay. I have to assume that they're not dead. What a crazy series of events. I mean, yeah, okay. I'm kind of thrown by the fact that we got, like, heavy into the prophecy stuff. I mean, it was already there, but now it's just like, no, this destiny. We went from vaguely having some destiny stuff happening, just like Kyogre and Groudon and all they're doing, because now we know that, no, Kyogre and Groudon, they the baddies of this. Kyogre and Groudon are not good. They need to be sealed away. Get them out of here. It's the legendary time to throw hands, run the ones. Well, it's just being declared champion of the Elite Four like that, and find out that he already technically was. Man, they really buffing up Wallace. Dang, like they all about the Wallace train on this one. But man, why did the orbs being sent out of Archie and Maxie cause that? Like, Jeebus. And to know that the only thing to stop them is the legendary giant, the friggin' Reggies. Oh, man, that's wild. That is wild. That recontextualizes a good amount of what I've been seeing. Gives a bit of a payoff for why we haven't seen Steven yet, because it's like, no, Steven's been on his own little journey. This is why you haven't run into him. He's been, going at the task, trying to avert any of this happening to begin with. And to think that maybe we could have got past some of this by just contact your son, Mr. Stone. Having a better way of contacting Steven than handing it off to some little girl. But it all worked out in the end. But on Tate and Liza, and I guess this is one way of her maybe earning her final badges? And then what about Norman? She'd still have to get a badge from Norman, unless Norman hands it off to his son to fight her. I wonder. And there are so many twists and turns and just the devastation of it all. Like, my God, this is years and years of repair. Look, I live in a place that got ravaged by hurricanes, and one of the last big ones, the land ain't recovered since, and we just had to work around it. So, man, seeing devastation like this, it's bringing back some memories and thought. Just, wow. And to know that Ruby and Sapphire had a friend, but then again, yeah, they were at an age, because at that age, I would have barely remembered. I would remember that I played with someone and had fun, and it'd be at a complete loss to who it was. But then again, with such a traumatizing experience, you'd think they'd have a better time remembering. I don't know. But it's just interesting how that factors into everything. That you'd think their parents would tell the story of what happened. Yeah, usually parents can't shut up about that kind of stuff. I guess we'll see. Well, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the ride. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and hope to see you later. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.